This is what I'm going to show you how to make in this video. As always, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, the entire template that you just heard is available at the top of the description on my website for just $5. It's a super accessible way to make the best music you've ever made of your life today using this really high quality template. I'm also available for lessons, ghost productions, and track finishing at the moment. The link for that is at the top of the description. The slots are starting to fill up, so definitely go grab one while they're available. Thanks so much for the support, guys. Every little bit helps, and let's dive in. Alright, we're at 155 BPM, and the first thing we have up here actually is this silent sidechain. So yeah, it's just a kick, silent, it's just this little short click. Then we have the actual main kick. So we have kind of three different layers to this. We have the main kick, we have the bass, and then we have this sort of like, almost like a donk bass on top. So, starting with the kick, it's three layers. We have this mid-range layer, this high-end layer. So those are each just kicks, where you can see I'm using EQ3 to take just the mids, just the highs on this one, and then distorting it. You can see that makes it punch a lot more. But then we have this low end layer, which I actually synthesized. So a lot of people were asking how to synthesize a techno kick, so I wanted to show you guys. Now, to me, the best kick really comes from a combination of synthesis and samples. Like, if you try to just synthesize everything, like the low end and the high end and the mid range, it tends to sound a bit too much like, obviously, a synth. So I like doing this, where it's like the secret low end layer, like when you're hearing the whole kick, it's just like a hard kick, but then when you hear it on its own, you realize, oh yeah, that's a synth. And so what we're doing is, you can see there's very little processing. It's literally just EQ3 to focus in on just the lows, without that, with it. But everything's happening inside of the synth. And ideally, when you're doing this, you need to keep it really clean so that everything is really happening in the synth. Or else it's going to start to fall apart when you start trying to saturate and compress this and all that. So the way this is made is, it's three sine waves. You can see, basically what's happening is we're just really using the envelopes to create the sound. So the first one, this is like the volume envelope for the kick. And then the second one has this really fast, so that's just giving us like some punch. If I turn that off, it's just adding that tiny bit of like knock to the kick. And then this one, even more subtle. Then we have this pitch envelope, and this is the last part of it, but this is really like kind of fine-tuned. You can see what I'm doing here is I'm using these like multiple curves throughout here to really shape this. And this is what a kick kind of curve usually looks like, right? Like, if you look at the waveform of a kick, like, you know, this one, for example, you can kind of see that, like that. That's like that part at the start, and then you can see the pitch going down. And so we're kind of just creating that with the synth. And that's how the best kick synthesis is going to work, is using the synth to do what essentially, like on a scientific level, the sound that's a sample does. So that's what we're doing with this. And all that you need to make sure of is starting on one of these, which is basically like a multiple of 12, so that it's an octave. And then also you want to make sure that when the sustain comes down, that's within an octave of the root note as well, because we're in the key of A here for this track, and I was able to tune our kick very easily if we're using a synth to make it. Right? And as soon as this is out of tune, the whole kick falls apart. Like, that's in tune. Check out if I move it a little bit out. All of a sudden it becomes bad. So you really want to make sure that that's coming down onto the right note with the sustain there. Then on the main kick group there, so I've just got a little bit of overdrive. Here's without it. With it. Very little bit, but it just kind of glues it together. It gives it some more punch. For the bass, it's made with actually another kick, which is being stretched out. You can see I warped it. And yeah, you can stretch out a kick and get that nice like bass. Just a bit of pedal, some EQ. Cutting out those lows, that's something I actually noticed when I was studying these kicks, like referencing them. This is what they do a lot. They're not having like the super lows in their kick still. It's usually like cutting that at like 50 hertz or something like that, like maybe between 30 to 50, and letting that really breathe. Because if I turn that off, see, it sits so much better with that EQ, and it's a subtle thing, and you'll be sitting there wondering why your bass just still isn't sounding right. So then the last layer is the Donk bass. So this is made with 3 layers. This is just playing A, the root note of the key we're in. So this is this layer. This is most of what you're hearing. So this is just a square wave, a bit of pulse width. You can see we got an envelope on the filter, and then the pulse width, and then just the saw. Then we have this layer, which is the exact same patch, but just with some unison. Just layered in there. And then this layer, which you can see is this little FM sound. So this just fills in some of that mid-range. Without it. And then with it, it just adds, you can hear that little extra bit of fullness. And then we just have a bit of reverb with a lot of pre-delay, so you get like a vroom, vroom, like kind of bounces off of the bass. A bit of overdrive blended in there, a tiny high-end cut, some drum bus blended in there, a limiter which really just pulls everything up and glues it all together, a high-pass filter, a sidechain, and then this EQ cutting out some room for the kick. And then on the group of everything, we have another deep low-end cut, so here's without that. Then with it, you can see why we do this. Then I have a limiter gluing everything together. Just really makes that kick like punch, and everything kind of feels like it's in the same world. And then a utility converting the bass to mono. So then we have the rest of the drums. So there's a lot of groove happening, but it's actually very simple, right? It's really just, we have this 909 snare over top of the kick. This adds a lot of punch. So this is a snare with a bit of reverb, and it's distorted. I've also made it shorter here and high passed it. But if you put that over the kick, check out with it, and then without it. So it adds a lot of groove just sitting over top of that. We have these guys. Main snare and hi-hat. These are from my Ultimate Hard Techno drum library. These are some really nice sounds. I'll put the link to that in the description. And then we have this Rave loop, and it all just sits right over top of the kick. So then we have some synths, starting with these 2 background stabs. So these are like these distorted, kind of like just aggressive, hard stabs like you hear in these style of tracks. So this first one is made using white noise in Operator. What we're doing is it's white noise. You can see there's the volume envelope. And then I'm actually using a bandpass filter. And what you do is you right click or double click if you're on a Mac and hit play by key. That's what I did. And then yeah, it'll play whichever note you put in. So that's playing A because that's the key that we're in. And then what I'm doing is the resonance is all the way up. So you get this very like, you get a pitch out of it basically. And then you use the shaper and that distorts it and that brings out the pitch even more. You can see if I turn that down, less pitch. Then we just have some delay, some reverb. I have a multi-band distortion. So here's without that. And then with it, you can hear, this really helps because it kind of fills out the sound, like you're distorting the highs just a little bit, right? Because it's just all blended on there with the dry wet. But you're doing the mids just a little bit as well. But it's like very specified distortion that's going to work really well in each of those and then come together as these nice layers all together. We have a bit of drum bus blended in there, high pass, and then sidechain. And then for the second one, it's also just playing A, and you can see these have a nice groove off of each other as well. They're not playing too much, but they fit together just nicely. This one is made with wavetable. So this is the square wave. It's almost like this alignment style sound. Well, yeah, so it's a square wave. You can see we just have a bunch of modulation. We have an envelope on the pulse width, also a different one on the sync, plus on the pitch, and then an LFO on the pitch as well, giving it that like warble. We have a bit of noise unison. We have some delay, some reverb, drum bus, a limiter, which again just really helps like pull this up and really like bring out those sounds and make the reverb and delay feel animated. We have a sidechain, and then just a bit of EQ. Then we have this vocal.
White people, let me see if you can dance.
So this is one of these like high-pitched style vocals like you hear in this type of track. It's very easy. It's not really that hard to process. You can see it's just sidechain, and then I have an EQ cutting out. There were like some bright highs that were kind of sharp with this, so I cut those out. What really makes it work though is more so how you work with it, like just having a very rhythmic flow like that, and then quantizing it really well, so then when you play that with the beat, and also the sidechain, it's just going to come together and really groove well. That's really the magic with those. It's not processing. It's not even really where you pull the vocals from. You could get these kind of vocals from almost any sample pack. It's just really chopping them up and really like just that simple quantizing the syllables like this onto the grid, you know, just very straight. And then it'll fit over that hard techno beat. And then the last thing down here is this synth, the main sound. So here's the MIDI for this. We're actually only using 3 notes. It's just A sharp, and G. You know, really simple, kind of evil sounding techno riff. And then we're just playing those across 2 different octaves. There's actually, A sharp is only in 1 octave, but yeah. And this is how you can take like just a very few notes like this and make something interesting. Now, what this really thrives on is call and response. We have the call, and then the response. No. Like one calls and then one responds. You know, and that's a very simple thing to do. And a lot of times when you hear this, you might think it's a lot of notes, right? Because it is a lot of notes. But if you just pick 3 notes on the keyboard that create this kind of nice, like, or in this case, you know, you can create that kind of a pattern. Make something like busy with very few notes. Now for the sound, it's made with wavetable. It's just 1 square wave. For a lot of these sounds, really just 1 oscillator sounds better, because once you start bringing in a second one, you get phases and you get all these little things moving around. If you just use 1 oscillator for these kinds of leads, you can make it fatter. Even though you would think 1 oscillator would be thinner, it can actually be fatter because it's going to be more like in your face. So we have a square wave with, you can see an envelope on the pulse width, the sync, and then also the filter frequency. So we're really playing with a lot of pulse width and sync stuff on square waves to make all these kinds of sounds that you hear in these tracks. That's what they're doing. And then also there's this LFO on the pulse width, or on the filter frequency. So you're getting that movement, that like when it slows down. We also have the glide here, that's part of this. And then just some unison, a bit of amp which is blended on there, this like very fast echo. I have it being a sidechain, and then just a high pass filter. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, and template. It's all available right at the top of the description on my website. Definitely go grab that. It really helps support me. I don't make a whole lot off of YouTube, but I'm able to keep bringing you guys new videos on all these different styles like this, so definitely go grab that. It also really helps support you making your best music. You can also book me for a lesson or a ghost production or track finishing. Link for that is at the top of the description. Definitely go grab one of those now while they're still available. They're going quick. Thank you so much for the support, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.